Hello. So today I wanted to go over how I use the Midi Baby 3 along with my Alexander pedals and Chase Bliss pedals. So to start off, the way I have this connected is like this. All my Alexander pedals and Chase Bliss pedals, so all four of these pedals are going into the qConnect. Then from the Midi Baby 3, I'm using the 5-pin connector coming out of there to the input 5-pin connector on the qConnect. So I've made sure that I've configured my qConnect so that the pass-through goes to all ports. You can control that, or you can turn it off completely, but I have it on to all. So essentially, whenever the Midi Baby 3 is sending any sort of MIDI commands on MIDI channels, the qConnect is just allowing it to just pass through and go into all ports, and whatever channel or whatever MIDI channel that I'm sending a command on, that corresponding pedal will respond. So that's how I have that set up. So what we'll do is I have it connected in here through the editor. So we're going to start off with the left foot switch here. So the left foot switch is connected to the Sky 5000 is where I have it configured. Really quick, my MIDI channels are wavelength is channel 1, Therma is channel 2, Sky 5000 is channel 3, and Dark World is channel 4. So the left foot switch I have assigned here, and it is on channel 3. So with the Sky 5000, it has a ramp function. I can access the ramp function by just pushing and holding the tab button here, and that initiates the ramp function, ramp up, and then I do it again to ramp down. So I could do it that way. Since I don't have any pedal risers, it becomes rather tedious to really tilt my foot a certain way and then have to activate it. Then I'm end up hitting some of these knobs here, which can be kind of annoying. So what I did was I just assigned it to my left foot switch, so that all I'm really doing is I'm sending a CC command or a control change to the Sky 5000. So it's really just the push of one button, and it initiates the ramp. And then I push it again, and then it ramps down. So now I've just assigned it for that action. Within the same button, I've also added a secondary function where I can do a hold. So my hold I have set up for 450 milliseconds, and obviously that is something you can play with, just on feel. There is a warning within the MIDI editor that if you go below 450, you may accidentally get a hold if you're trying to do a press and you happen to keep your foot down there just long enough to where you hit it, then it'll think you're doing a hold. And obviously that's something you can play with, and that's for your own taste really. So the secondary function that I have on it is to use one of the alt functions on this pedal. So all the Alexander pedals are going to have alt functions that you can access by holding down the center button here and then changing the knob. So this knob that I'm hitting right now are for the subdivision. So that's the first one, that's the second, and that's the third subdivision. So in terms of like the writing process, creative process, when I'm just messing around, for me personally, I don't like having to go down here, hold it, and let me just try this subdivision. Let me try that one. That's just my own personal preference. I don't like to do that. So I assigned it to this left button on a hold. So every time I push and hold it, it will send the command to change it to the subdivision. Now, how do I know which subdivisions go to what? Well, the user manual tells us in this instance. So if I pull up the Sky 5000 user manual, it's going to tell me that for ramping function, as an example, it tells me that it is going to be CC 97. And it tells me I can send any value to trigger the ramp. In terms of the divisions here, the subdivisions, it is CC 56. And it tells me right here that I have ranges. I can set anywhere from 0 to 42 for the first one, 43 to 85 for the second, and 86 to 127 for the third. So this is really straightforward. Essentially what I can do now is I know what the ranges are. So for the first one, I can put in any number between 0 and 42. I just put in 0, but you could do 5, 10, 15, 20, 23. It doesn't matter. You have up to 42 where you can hit that. Now those numbers represent positions on the knob when you start from 0 going clockwise all the way to the end. That's 127. So that's where those numbers come from. And a little bit later, I'll show you exactly how you can find out what those numbers are in cases where you don't have a user manual that tells you what those ranges are. So in this one here, so looking at the left foot switch here, you'll see that my first one I have you know, for the immediate act on the initial press, I'm doing the ramp function right there. So that's CC toggle channel 3 and controller. That's basically what the code is here. So CC 97 for ramp is what I'm looking at here for this first one, and I can send any value. So I'm just sending 10. So on the hold one for the subdivisions, I know that it is CC 56, and I have my ranges for the different subdivisions. So there's 3, so I'm going to be setting up 3 commands. So I have all 3 set up for CC toggle, and I have it set so that every hold is going to send 1 message per action. So that's why I have messages in batches with 1 message per action. So first one, MIDI channel 3, controller 56. Why do I know it's 56? Because the user manual tells me 56. And then the first value is going to be 0. Second value is going to be 43 because the range here is 43 to 85. And again, I can do anywhere between 43 and 85. I'm just choosing to use the lower end value. Again, that doesn't really matter. So, and so on. So I set up all 3 of them, and now I can do that. Just with the hold, I can now change the subdivisions. Very similar to the way the quadrant is. The quadrant has its tab button, tab foot switch on the left, which if you push and hold it, also you can go through your subdivision, which is really cool. On the Sky 5000, you don't have it. You have a tab, but then the secondary function on here is the ramping function. So this left foot switch really comes in handy in the way that I set it up. Now I could set up a third function within that foot switch for a longer hold. I just personally don't have a reason to do that. So I just have it set up for two functions for that 1 foot switch. All right, moving on over to the wavelength on the right foot switch. So on the right foot switch, I'm doing something very similar. The ramp function can be initiated here on the pedal itself. If I push and hold it, it'll initiate the ramp, and then I'll push and hold it again. It'll initiate the ramp again. So I did the same thing where I just have it on a single press on the right to initiate the ramp. Push it again, and does that. And the user manual, again, I'm referencing the user manual, which is really great that they have this information. I know that ramp is going to be CC 97, continuous controller. CC, that's what it stands for, 97, ramp, and I can send any value to trigger the ramp. And that's what I did here. So I'm going to go to edit this action so you can kind of see what it looks like as you're creating it. So I have channel 1, because that's where I have this, how I have that configured. CC toggle, channel 1, controller 97, send single value, and I just have 10 as the value. But again, it can be any value you want. Why did I choose 10? I don't know. Just because. All right, so that's how I have that first function on the right foot switch. Now for the secondary function, again, Alexander pedals have alt functions on most of their knobs. For the wavelength, it has up to 7 different waveforms. And they're accessible, and you can change them on a secondary function. So if I push it and hold the center button, I can now go through the different waveforms here. There's 7 of them, and they're designated by specific colors. And then the lights will also the LED will flicker according to the waveform. And it kind of gives you a visual representation of it. Now, how do I know what shape is which unless I just listen to it? The Alexander Pedals website under the wavelength has a great picture that shows you what the waveforms look like, and they're color coded, so you can always match that to those colors. But in terms of just coming up with new stuff, creating new presets, writing, that sort of thing, just messing around. Again, I personally don't like having to reach down and have to change this every time I want to try something that doesn't sound good. Let me reach down, let me try it again. That's just my own preference. So I assign that secondary alt function as a secondary function on my right foot switch. So I can push and hold it, and it will go through the different waveforms. Now, the neat thing about this is I can actually hold down the alt button here, and it's going to show you what the color, what colors are it's cycling through. So I'll push and hold it here. You can see it's going through the colors. I can push and hold it there. You can see it kind of cycling through the different waveforms. And then it goes all the way back to the beginning again, and I can just keep on doing that. So that's how I have that set up. Now moving on to the center foot switch. Right now I'm only using one function on the center foot switch, and what it is the qConnect only has two foot switches here. So like on the DMC 3XL Gen 3, you have a third foot switch up at the very top, and the neat thing about that is you can go through your different presets. And you can have it configured so when you land on the preset that you want, you can hit that third button up at the top to engage that preset, which is really cool because if you want to have an option to bypass all your pedals at any time, you know, you can when you're in a preset, you can then go navigate to that preset that has everything bypassed and then push and hold it. And I think there is another function where you can like a shortcut where you can push and hold one of the buttons there and it bypasses everything. That I'm not entirely sure. It's been a while since I've had that that MIDI controller. But the lack of that third button here kind of takes that away, and so you're really only left with alternatives of, you know, do I program a preset with everything bypassed every other preset, or do I just kind of quickly hop over to that one, you know, where I have everything bypassed? You know, that to me, I just assigned this foot switch up there to bypass everything. So the way I have it configured is I'm not using the immediate press because I figure I may want to use that for something else. So I have it on the hold. So on the hold, it will go and bypass all pedals. So if I push and hold it here, then all pedals are bypassed, and it doesn't matter if I only have certain pedals on, it just will bypass. It sends that bypass MIDI command to all four of those pedals. So that's something that's really handy, and it's pretty neat. That's how I have that the Midi Baby 3 set up. Now the neat thing about this is I can actually have I have another foot switch hooked up to the Midi Baby 3, giving me 2 additional foot switches that I can have up to three commands on each one of those foot switches, and that's right here. So this foot switch here is actually connected into the port over here up at the top, this jack, this multi-jack. And I have it configured over here, multi-jack left. I have it set up for external foot switch. And when you do that, it will expand and give you these options here for the tip and the ring. So this is a momentary, normally open dual foot switch with a TRS. So this one's wired to the tip and this one's wired to the ring. So looking at the MIDI the Midi Baby editor, you can see here that I can again, just like the 3 buttons on the Midi Baby 3, I can assign actions to those buttons. Just the same. The only thing is I don't have a fancy LED that I can, you know, I can assign whatever color I want to it. It's not a big deal. It still works just the same. So like for example, what I did over here on this foot switch is I set this up for the dark world. So I basically have it where I can turn on the world side. I can go to the dark side, and I can push and hold it, and it bypasses everything on the pedal. So it doesn't, you know, I have it set up that way. Again, the really neat thing about this is you can export all of these settings. So 1, you have it as a backup. 2, if you want to have different configurations for, like, if you're going to go gig somewhere, you're going to just mess around, you can have different settings already exported in files. So when you come in, all you have to do is import from that file in there and just upload and save it, and then boom, you know, you have you know, completely different settings for how you want these foot switches to behave, which is really cool. Again, if you want these switches to behave a certain way when you're gigging, when you're at a show, versus when you're at home, you can do that really easily just by exporting a file of everything that's in the configuration of the within the Midi Baby editor, and then just import from those files and just write it to the pedal, which is really great. So going back to the control changes on the knobs, how do I know? In the example of the wavelength, how do I know that when I'm holding this down, what numbers to send? How do I know that it's 0? How do I know that this is 35 all the way to 127? How do I know that? So the way that I know that is MIDI is, the great thing about MIDI is it's a standard. So the knob, when we're looking at it here, the first position here is going to be 0, and going all the way clockwise is 127. That's kind of just a rule across the board. So if I want to know what noon is, all I have to do is divide. 127 divided by 2 gives me 63.5. That's obviously not a number that we can use because we have to use whole numbers, we can't use decimals. So you can just round up 64 or round down. Quite honestly, it's a little bit of trial and error because you know, since you don't know exactly where all of the values are on there. You know, you may miss it, so you may need to move up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 until you get it. But looking at this little chart here that I made, it gives you a really, really good idea in terms of where you are. In the example of the waveforms on the wavelength, I know that there's 7 of them, so I just take 127 and divide it by 7, and then that gives me a pretty good idea of where I need to be. I did have to make a few adjustments to kind of fine tune 1 or 2 of the waveforms, but for the most part, I was able to take the number that I got when I divided by 7, and it pretty much got me almost all the way there, which is really great. And you can see here, these are the values that I came up with. So, you know, this is 0, 34 ends up being around. Let's see if I turn this on. There we go. Like right here, that's maybe 34, 35. And then from there, it goes up to like, 50, 55, 56, around there. So again, the only way you know that is if you get that number, you divide it by 7, and then that's how you get those values. And again, kind of referencing this chart here, it gives you a really good idea of where that is. So the cool thing is that once you understand the basics, you can pretty much you can do a lot within MIDI, especially using CC control change commands versus PC, which are program changes. Program changes are basically your presets. I want you to bypass this pedal, turn this pedal on, with these safe settings on that pedal, and recall that. That's PC or program changes. CC is basically making changes to individual settings using a reference like this, 0 to 127, and telling it, okay, I want you to move to this particular value. I want you to move to 53 on for CC 57, which is a specific knob on that pedal, and I'm telling it to move to a certain spot, which is really, really great. Okay, well, that's all I had for today. Excuse my incomplete board. This thing always seems to be under construction, but I'll get there. At least get to a point where I won't want to really mess with it for a long period of time. All right, if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to ask in the comments below or reach out to me. Thank you very much.